Hi.
Good afternoon, John. How are you? Good
Very
evening.
well, very well. How are you?
Very good, very good. Now,
Good.
everybody, we will be starting the live stream in 15 minutes. So please stay tuned. 6 o'clock, the event will begin. We're just going to leave it on a roll so you can know about next year's event. I'll see you all in 15 minutes. morning and welcome everyone to the Victorian Engineering and IT Graduate Career Expo Job Interview Masterclass. My name is Jess and joining me tonight we have John. He is the Talent Acquisition Manager at one of Australia's most iconic brands. This brand is obviously renowned for one of Australia's most famous products, Vegemite. Welcome, John. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Very welcome, very welcome. So I'm really, really excited. We're going to be dropping some real tips, some real truths for job interview tips, okay? This is specifically for graduates and students. So for those of you who are about to start going out into the real world and applying for jobs, there's just so many things that you should know. So I guess to get started, I'm going to give a little bit of background into who I am, what I do, and as well, maybe my first number one hottest tip. So my name is Jess and I'm a career coach. I work at Reesby. I actually manage the business, and what we do is we help people find jobs, and we help companies like Kraft, for example, find amazing talent. So over my career, over my many, many, many thousands of interviews that I've done, I have really found some of the top secrets for landing a job. So my 4 keys to success for landing an interview will be shared throughout our interview. But first of all, we might start with just my number one tip, which would be make sure that you actually seek professional help before your interview. It's so important, guys, and it's going to help you so much. So the fact that you're already here and tuning into this event just means that you're really taking your career seriously, and I think that's fantastic. John, did you want to explain a little bit more about Kraft and the types of opportunities that you guys have, a bit more about your grad program over there?
Absolutely, yeah. Thanks very much for that, Jess. So my name is John, or Jono, as I'm known as, and I'm a talent acquisition partner at Kraft Heinz. So you may have all heard of our company, Kraft Heinz, before, but we're a food manufacturing company in the what we call the FMCG market. So fast manufacturing goods, fast manufacturing consumer goods. Essentially, we make food and beverage products. So like Jess said before, Vegemite, we're well known for in the past. We don't do that anymore, but we do Golden Circle, the fruit juice. So we make canned baked beans, we make tuna, we make many, many different products, and we've got many, many different categories across Australia and New Zealand. So a little bit about what I do. I'm a talent acquisition partner. So my role is to work with, I guess, people like Jess, and also to work with the marketing candidates to hire the best talent for my company. So our grad program, we run a major grad program once a year. We actually start the grad program in February or March. We start advertising, and that's actually to hire for the next year. So it's a good tip for all of you prospective job seekers out there who are graduates. Make sure you get in nice and early. Make sure you're aware of what you want to do next year and what kind of roles you want to apply for next year, because the big companies are going to be hiring nice and early in the year for the next year to start in the next year. So we look to hire anywhere between 5 to 10 graduates all across our business, and it's quite an intense 12-month graduate program, starting with a bit of a boot camp. So we actually send our graduates out to one of the sites. Typically it's the Northgate in Queensland Golden Circle site, to see how they make the fruit juice and how they can the pineapples and things like that. And then you get placed in 2 rotations throughout the business, and that can be any of our functions in the business. So we really hire from any background. So it doesn't matter what degree you've done. If you've got the right attitude and competencies that we're looking for, there's opportunities for you at a company like our company. Yeah, that's a little bit about, I guess, the graduate program.
Amazing. So I really want to emphasize, obviously for this event, we probably do have quite a high volume of engineering and IT students and grads who are tuned in. So I personally think this is the best industry to be in. So like, you already are so on a winner for huge career success. engineering and IT are the two most hot, in-demand areas. I mean, job security is going to be phenomenal over the next 10 years because companies like Kraft, this is a really good example of a brand that you might not have thought of to actually apply to, similar to things like a retail store, let's say Zara. But remember, all of these companies have factories, they have websites, they have internal systems and software and applications that they need to develop and maintain. So it's a really good example of a brand that is so iconic that everybody knows that you might not have thought that you could work for being in IT. We start to think of brands like Google all the time and Apple, but remember, there are so many brands out there that have IT and tech-focused roles. This event is a part of the Digital Innovation Festival. So that's all about innovation. And we do believe that, you can work in a big brand or you can work in startups as well. And that technology really is changing, forever changing. So I really think you guys should give yourselves a pat on the back for whatever it is that you're studying. And I would encourage you to always continue to upskill yourself. So to get started and right into the crux of my best top interview tips, which I've got a lot, we actually have a TikTok account. And so if you do want to stay up to date with our regular posts, and don't hesitate to get over there and check that out. It's Reesby Careers. I'll have that in the comments later. So there are 4 key pillars, I think, for getting a job, okay? So that's like for even being considered for a position. So this is before you even go to the interview. And I would like to call it, that you need to be a prick. What that means is PRIC. So your presentation skills. So this is like how you interview, your mannerisms, how well you speak, and how you just generally present yourself. R is for your resume. So making sure you have an incredible CV. I mean, so many people spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on their education and all these extra little fancy things, and they forget about a professional resume, which is going to make the world of difference. We all go get our hair professionally cut. It's time to get yourself a professional resume. The third one, which is I, is industry experience. So this could be an internship. It could be a part-time job. It might be a little freelance project that you've decided, call up a local company that cuts grass and see if you can build them an app. Whatever it is that you're thinking to do, guys, just some industry experience. And then the last one, which is C, is what you've probably already got. I can safely say all of you probably have it, which is your certifications and qualifications. This is anything relevant to your particular field that makes sure you can get the job, or whether it's a license or some sort of specific certificate that you will need. Okay. Then we move on to actually going and finding jobs and applying for jobs. So it's all about quality, not quantity. Okay. You should only apply for jobs that really spark joy. So apply for jobs that when you see it advertised, you go, wow, that's the kind of company that I want to work for. For example, Kraft have been around for so long. They are absolutely iconic. And if you check out the reviews at that company, it's phenomenal, the type of work culture that they do have there. So Jono is so lucky to work for such an amazing company, and they would not be able to be so long-standing if they didn't have good business practice. So remember, sometimes how long the business has been around actually really can make a big difference. It's not the be-all and end-all, but at least you definitely know that your job is not going anywhere anytime soon. The next thing that I would say is narrow it down to 10 top jobs. So you can go find 100, don't apply, narrow it down to your top 10, put them on a list, rank them, do your research, and then start looking to apply. When you're ready to apply, remember to record all those places that you have applied to. I'm sure, John, I'm sure you've had candidates before when you ring up and you call and you say, hi, I'm calling around Kraft, and they're kind of a bit lost and forget. Does that happen to you as well? Or is it just
many times, all the time, actually.
All the time. And it's kind of already starts you off with this kind of like, they don't really, maybe not that interested, especially if you're calling on the phone, guys. Like, make sure you have a really professional voicemail. Have you ever had, Jono, where you ring up and the voicemail's kind of got some attitude? It's fun for your
Yeah,
friends, but maybe not if you're applying for jobs, right? So
absolutely.
make sure you remember that and answer the phone really professionally. That's so important. So name, speaking, example, Jessica speaking, Jono speaking. That's just a really easy way to answer the phone. That's, nice and profesh. Now, I wanted to get your view on this, Jono. Do you tend to have like a certain attire that you kind of like look for when people apply, or is craft a bit more casual? Like, what's the go-to outfit for you guys when it comes to interviews? Is it more professional?
Yeah, for sure. Look, I think as a company, we are a business casual company. So our motto is, dress for your day and whatever's happening in your day. So you might have an important business meeting, in which case, wear appropriate clothes for that meeting. Or you might be out visiting a customer. For us, a customer could be Coles or Woolworths or one of the supermarkets. Or you might even be dealing with a smaller supermarket, in which case dress appropriately for that. But I think interviews is an interesting one because it's the impression that counts, and you need to be professional in the interview, and you need to put your interviewer at ease, and make them aware that you are a professional candidate. So I think always it's best to, if anything, to overdress than underdress, because it's that impression that counts, and you want to put in a little bit of effort, and make sure that you come across as polished, because polish is something that interviewers do look for. When we're interviewing candidates. So I would say whatever is business appropriate and as business professional as you can, for a guy and girl, that would be my recommendation. And interviewers do notice that, definitely.
Yeah. I definitely agree. So always stick to like business attire. It's the safest bet. An interview is not the time to try out the newest, fashion style and trend. I really think just play it safe wherever you can. Make sure it fits nice, clean, neat, and tidy. As well, I don't know, Jono, if you've ever had a candidate show up like either A, really late, or B, really early. I think they're both. What would be the earliest you've ever had someone show up for an interview?
Well, the day could be wrong. I've had candidates, come in the wrong day for their interview, so a day
Oh,
earlier than their interview.
no.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, not good. That's not
Yeah,
good.
and you also get you also get the location as well. You always get candidates. They might not be able to find the location, so it's important to whatever you need to do, GPS it, Google Maps it the day before. Make sure you know where your interview is and how to get to the office as well.
That is literally on my tips list. So you read my mind because, and this guy's like, we're telling you this because we've learned this over our careers. So like it's coming from a place of this is what we know, and we hope we can impart that info to you. So like get out on Google Street View. That's what I love to do
Yeah, do
before
your
any
recon. Absolutely.
meeting. Yeah, do your recon. Do it like, stalk it out, like check it out, have a little look, make sure you can either see the brand logo or like just make sure you're definitely in the right place. Like our office is at 47 Burke Street, but there's actually another Burke Street somewhere in Melbourne. It's somebody's house. So I don't know if anyone's ever actually gone to that person's house. I feel really, really bad if they have, because I'm sure it's probably happened before, but we are in the CBD. So like, they sometimes can be street names that sound similar or a number that you might just have wrong. So be really careful because that can make or break you going to that interview, especially if you haven't left early enough. So, and worst case scenario, to be honest, go there a day before and check it out physically so you know how long it will take you. But Google Maps is a really good option, and do your timings be extra early. But remember, drop in the comments, everyone, and I will have my team check that out. Drop in the comments. We'll be having prizes like professional resumes up for grabs. How long you think is the perfect golden time to be arriving in the reception area, okay? Because I definitely can say that like 2-3 hours before you're meant to be at your interview time, that actually is not a good thing, because we as business professionals, John, I'm sure you got client meetings, or you might have other people who are interviewing, and if it just makes it a little bit sort of stressful and a bit too eager, possibly could give across the impression.
Yeah, Definitely. And the other thing as well to that is the communication part of it as well. Like things happen and you might be late, you might get held up, traffic or anything like that. It's important in those instances to communicate. And that's when the role of, I guess, your recruiter, if it's through an agency, or your talent acquisition partner or HR comes into play. Keep them notified, and then they can manage the expectations from their side as well. If you're running late, let us know.
Yeah. And that's another thing. I really love to compare job interviews to dating every time. You want to look your best, be engaging, obviously don't ask them for dinner, but I'm just saying, like, treat it just like a date. And remember that ghosting is prevalent as well in job interviews. So if you're like, you woke up late and you just cannot make it to the interview, the most professional thing to do would be to notify them. Don't just go missing. And this comes down to how much you want that job, which is why I say only apply for jobs that actually you want to go for. That if they had an interview at 5 a.m., you would be there. All right. Because otherwise, if you're like, oh, I don't really care too much anyway, and you want to sleep in and skip the interview, it doesn't give a great impression. So just keep that in mind. And if you're dealing with like a recruiter, remember this role that you've applied for, you might not be that keen on, but that recruiter will remember that for next time and probably might not put you forward, possibly. I don't know how all places work. I would never exactly like judge someone, but it does make you concerned that they won't show up again if you would have maybe put them forward till, let's say, Google. So keep that in mind. So be on time. The next thing I would say is always say yes whenever they offer you a glass of water, right? I mean, how long is the longest interview you've ever done, Jono?
The longest interview?
Yeah.
That I've done? Yeah, they carry on for longer than an hour, if you get carried away on a tangent, definitely. And also in Melbourne during summer, you get some really hot days. You get people coming into an interview after they finished work and they've had a really long day. So that's a really good tip there as well, yeah.
Yeah. Always say yes, because you might not be thirsty now, but after about an hour and a half of sitting with Jono, excited and talking all about your life, you're going to really be a bit hallucinating maybe about that glass of water. And, make sure as well that you have a coffee order or tea order ready to go if you're meeting in a cafe. Do you guys ever do off-site interviews, like where you might meet at a cafe or somewhere?
I do. Yeah. Our head office is actually based in South Bank, in a building called Freshwater Place, and we're quite lucky that downstairs there's about 4 or 5 different cafes. So I do tend to meet candidates downstairs as well. Yeah.
Right near Microsoft, which is notoriously hard to find that building. So I know the building, right. Beautiful building.
Good.
And make sure you got your tea or coffee order ready to go. Just only reason I say this, guys, is because, and even if you don't want to drink tea or coffee, if they're ordering something, you should. I just think that's a bit of an older school bonding thing. It's a bit kind of like on a date if someone's like, oh yeah, I'll have dinner, and then it's like, oh sorry, I'm not hungry. It's a little bit, you'd want to share that even if you don't drink it. So you don't want to be sitting there going, I don't know what I want in the next 5 minutes. You're stressing out over a tea order or coffee order. So just have it ready to go. The next thing I would say is, I don't know if you've ever experienced it, Jono, but do you agree with me that there is such a thing as like resting, not interested interview phase? It kind of looks a bit like this. Yeah. Do you know?
Yeah, I definitely know that. Actually, not many people have kind of highlighted that, but it is a thing, definitely. And you've got a lot of distractions happening. You've got your phone beeping and things like that. And there are times when I've been in an interview and I've been, explaining an answer to a candidate who's asked a question, and yeah, you do see that kind of lose interest. And I guess the same thing applies for interviewers as well. We should hold ourselves accountable to not.
I agree. Oh yeah, goes all both ways. Don't you get me wrong. I mean, we can't be late either. We should not be ghosting. We should definitely be always engaging and positive. So bring the energy even when you're not talking, particularly when you're not talking, because that's when the person is talking, they're looking at you for your reaction, your response. So just be really mindful. If you don't know, then kind of like check yourself in the mirror. Now, there's also like the question of like, tell me a bit about yourself. Jono, have you ever asked that question and someone's given you like a way totally not what you were expecting response? Is this a question you usually use in your interviewing?
Yeah, we do. We do. Tell us about yourself. And the other big one is, talk us through your career as well. And just on the point that you made actually earlier on in the piece is that we always ask, why are you interested in applying for the company for Kraft Heinz as well?
Mhm.
So it's important in those instances to even think about an answer because I remember a lot of times we'll ask that question, tell us about yourself, tell us about your career, and that will spark a half an hour response and conversation. And that's most of the interview done. So by the time they finish the answer, so definitely.
I have had candidates look of all ranges, but bizarre answers, going on about their passions and well, I've got, a dog, its name is Jeffrey. Like just when they ask you, tell me a bit about yourself, what they're actually asking, because this is kind of like a bit of an Aussie way, I guess, of asking that question. It's more that they want to know, like, tell me about your work history or your relevancy to this position. So start with whatever's the most relevant to this role. So let's say you're applying for a sales job, yeah, but your most recent role was working in a supermarket, doing fruit restocking, but your previous role to that was a sales job. Don't talk about the supermarket role first. Talk about the sales job first, the most relevant experience. And if you don't have the actual industry experience, first of all, you should go get it. But like some sort of volunteer thing, I'm sure you can. We do have internship programs if you're really struggling. But I would highly, highly recommend that you then talk maybe about your studies, your uni project, and highlight your skills, particularly an engineer or tech role. Don't just expect that they know what your technical skills are. Say I'm really proficient in Python programming. I recently did a project through my university where we developed this fantastic artificial intelligence, whatever it is that you worked on, make it interesting and engaging.
Yeah.
Yeah, go Jono, you've got something to add.
I was just going to say that's a fantastic tip because it's actually a trick question when we ask you, tell us about yourself. And the actual question we're asking is, can you take your entire career or your personal life and shorten it and collate it and pass the information back to us in a concise fashion? And sometimes we use the 3 and 5 rule. So when you're talking about your career, talk about your last 3 roles or the last 5 years in your career. Those are the key ones that we want to focus on. And if we're going back to 10, 15 years, if you're an experienced candidate, 20 years previously, it's probably better to shorten that experience and really focus on the last couple of years is most relevant, like you said.
I get that all the time. I have a lot of people start with the most junior role ever. Now, what you're doing is you're introducing the worst bit first. You want the best part to be leading, right? So you want whatever's most relevant to this job to be highlighted the first thing you say. Because like they say, first impressions always matter, and then trail back in time to wherever and whatever. Okay, so keep that in mind. It's just a good idea. The next thing would be, what would you recommend for someone, Jono? Have you ever had candidates who, I know we can't shake hands now, but just a bit of sweaty, kind of musty hands. I know students get really nervous. So have you experienced that before? It's not good, is it?
Yeah, for sure. Look, and that's it comes down to a first impression thing as well. And we get very, very diverse candidates applying for our roles, and you never know, what kind of day you've had. You might be super nervous, or you might have had a super tough day. As interviewers, we work on unconscious bias, actively trying not to take a first impression, for example, as a holistic view of the candidate. Let's say, their clothing might be a little bit off, or the handshake might not be a firm handshake. It might be quite a weak handshake, but we're trying to keep an open mind as interviewers. But at the same time, candidates can also do whatever they can to kind of mitigate that as well.
I really agree with that. I super, super agree with that. By the way, we want to find the right person for the role. We want you to do well. It's not that we're looking for all the mistakes in anything that you ever do in an interview. We really want you to do well. We know that as a graduate or a young person, that we want you to do well. So, like I said, it's not like we're trying to think of all the worst bits, but these are just little tips I think that will really help. I would recommend, if you do get musty, sort of sweaty hands, hand sanitizer. It's very popular now. Put that on. It's got alcohol in it, so it will dry up the hands. Or you can sit on your hand, right? But you shouldn't be shaking hands now, so we can move away from that one. And I have a very long list here, everyone. So, like, I'm kind of particular. We haven't even got to the question part so much yet. So, and we may end up having to do like a part 2 on TikTok or something. The next thing I probably would say as well would be like research the company and the job in detail, plus the person you're meeting. Have you had that before, Jono, before an interview, someone's checked you out, or have you ever had a candidate super not prepared? Talk to me.
Can't recommend that enough. All your tips are absolutely on point here, Jess, but definitely research the company. That's critical, and that's what's going to set you apart from everybody else. And to your point, I have had interviews where the candidate's completely unprepared and doesn't know anything about the company. In fact, it's quite funny because our company's quite well known for what we do, and I have had candidate calls. Candidates have applied for the role, and given them a call, and they've actually not heard of the company before and not known what we do, kind of thing. But once, possibly because they weren't prepared, and once they actually Google it, they realize, these guys are the company that make this and that. And so, I mean, the moment's lost by that stage, right? It's that impression's been made. So it's very important to research. Yeah, absolutely. And I do get people look at my LinkedIn profile and things like that. And that's a positive, I think, for me.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I'm saying. I think, guys, like, always check out who you're meeting with beforehand. It also helps to recognize a person when you're about to meet with them, or for, in a Zoom, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's just really, really, really useful. I would also encourage as well that you have done that research before you've even hit apply, because you shouldn't be doing your research just before the interview. Because if they call you up, like Jono mentioned, like a phone interview, and you don't know anything, you forget which job you applied for, this all comes down to just apply for jobs you actually want. The last thing you want is to be in a job that you don't really like, and you're just going to set yourself up for failure, get lots of negative responses to companies, because usually they can feel it if it's not a good match, and then you just kind of end up getting a little bit sad because you might be getting a lot of rejections. But if you actually just focus on jobs you want, you might have better results. So that's a really good tip. The next tip I would probably say is, like, for your Zoom interviews, make sure you're dressing just like you would for a face-to-face interview. Have you had anyone so far? Have you been doing your Zoom interviews lately there, Jono?
I have. Yeah, we do a lot. So we're on Microsoft Teams, and we use Zoom as well. So a lot of our interviews are virtual at the moment. So yeah, that's a massive tip as well. Make sure you're dressed appropriately. You've got the right lighting happening. I mean, I've had Zoom interviews and video calls with candidates. I've had, backwards caps, snapbacks, and singlets, and all sorts of things, right? But
it's like notorious. We can see you. It's not just your voice that we can hear. We can see you. You should be dressing just like you would for an interview, and go to the neatest, nicest part of your house, not with your dirty clothing hanging up in the background. Okay, guys, I know some of you might be in shared accommodation, so please just try to find a nice quiet spot that you can log into and have a clear wall behind you as best you can. Of course, the only reason I say this is because you just don't want any distractions, right? That's just easy. Then they can focus on you. That's very, very, very important. Now, what would you say to someone when they're kind of doing the sort of top 3 weaknesses? That one is usually kind of a hard one, I find, that the students always say to us they struggle with. What would be your recommendations?
Yeah, that is a question that we ask as well, and again, that's a little bit of a trick question as well. We're not trying to find the holes in your experience or anything like that. I think the key there is to show us that you're aware. So the first one is self-awareness, that you're aware of the things that you need to work on, and the second one is the progress and your action plan around that. So make sure when you tell us, this is an area that I'm working on, and this is what I'm doing to improve it. And if you answer the question like that, that's a good way to answer it. And again, just be careful not to be too cliche as well, because I've got the response, I'm too good at this. Is what's your biggest weakness? I'm too good at doing this.
I'm too attention to detail. I'm too on time. I'm too obsessed and hardworking, maybe. No, you're not. But I think, and that's why, like, having real practice, and that's why I say, like, get a career coach, like, book a sesh. You can do it with me if you like, if you feel comfortable with me. Book a session. I want you to do well. But the thing is, like Jono said, the amount of times that the same candidates say the same things is crazy. But definitely don't say, like, weaknesses, like, well, I find I sleep in a lot and I'm really disorganized. Like, don't say that. You could highlight the fact that A, got no industry experience, not much, could work on that. B, that my tech skills can be improved, or my engineering skills could be a lot better. I don't know much of the software, programs used in the industry, but that comes into my experience. And then C, maybe that you kind of like lacking confidence and you get very nervous in interviews, but that you're working on that, and actually be working on these things. Another thing that I think, Jono, I don't know if you've got candidates that tend to be like this, but make sure that you actually are engaged in the community. Yeah, like get out and do other things, like be involved in meetups, right? I think that that's something that companies these days look for, if I'm not mistaken. Like, be involved in those groups and connect with people. This will help you build your network, don't you think?
Yeah, definitely. We do look for those things, and we do want to find out about the individual and their passions, even outside of work. And I think the trend that a lot of the bigger companies and even the smaller companies are heading towards is that kind of environmental awareness, community approach, charity work, corporate social responsibility. Those are things that are on the agenda for every company, and going to continue to be so for the next 5 to 10 years. And so to demonstrate that you have those passions outside of work is also important as well. It's another feather in the cap.
Yeah, I really, really agree. I'm just checking what kind of questions we may have, right? So let's have a little look. And if anyone's got any questions, please drop them down. We'll be giving away a professional resume. I so encourage you guys, hop onto our website and just like actually have a look at what they look like, because I can guarantee you I got stacks and stacks of resumes that people say, oh, but I went to my uni career hub and they checked it and they said it's fine. It's like, okay, well then, what do you want me to say to you? Because like the truth is, it's not that great. And you know that, and I know that, and we all know that. So let's just invest in yourself. Everyone wants to spend like $300 on a pair of Ray-Ban Sunnies. You know what I mean? Want to look cool, but then, you could be getting like a $80, $90, $100,000 job straight out of uni if you really actually try. And I guarantee you that you can, because I've dealt with candidates and helped them get into jobs like that. Like people who have worked at like Woolworths and get into Facebook. Do you know what I mean? Like it's really crazy the difference it makes when you actually care. So let's have a little check. I had Zoom interview recently and the interviewer was in casuals as working from home. Yeah, Vinny, I totally agree with you. I'm not for that, to be honest. I'm like, even when we were working remote, we all were dressed professionally. So I don't know why they would do that. So it goes both ways. The next thing, should I always ask questions when the interviewer prompts at the end? I read that you should ask things related to the position, so it shows you're interested. What do you think, Jono, to that one?
Yeah, look, I agree. I think, yeah, you should definitely ask questions at the end of an interview. It's an opportunity for you, and there's a lot of things that we don't tell you that the job description doesn't tell you. And from doing your research on the company, if you're really passionate about that job and you're keen on the role, you should have a lot of questions to ask. You can't possibly cover every single thing about the role and the company in your 30-minute, 45-minute, 1 hour interview. So my advice is always have a question at the end of an interview, whether or not it's role related, or talk about the culture. Ask them what the team structure is like if they haven't already talked to you about that. Ask them about what the development opportunities for yourself are. I mean, what kind of trainings does the company run? What kind of charities does a company work with? Ask them about their social responsibility and what they're doing for the community. Yeah, anything really.
You just keep on reading my mind. It's insane, because for me, I think the number one thing is like, tell me about the team that I would be working with if I was in this role. Like, can you tell me like who I would be working with? What are their interests? What are their skills like? Things like that. Or like what's the projects currently that you're working on? That is going to be so much better than you saying, so how much money does this role pay? And like, you know, how long until I would get a promotion? Like those kinds of questions you want to avoid. You really want to avoid. Next company have the saying, Google the correct company and the correct industry. Yes. Oh my God, that's actually a really good point. I'm going to bring that comment up. This is Workaholic Filler. I love that name as well, by the way. You know, basically the point is there are some companies that have the same name. And if you find the wrong company and you're like, oh, well, you guys are a, you know, online retail store and you like do this, do that. And they're like, no, we're not. That's this other company. You know, you've got to like make sure it's the right, correct company. The best way to know is like, look at what the email address is that they sent you the invite on. Was it at, for example, craftheinz.com, or was it at craftheinzco.com, for example, you know, as an example. Make sure it's the correct spot on company. I agree 15 minutes prior to the interview is the right time. Ooh, looks like, but he's saying I agree 15 minutes prior. So someone else must have commented in here, I think, the correct time. So whoever said it first, 15 minutes is the golden time to be in that reception area saying hello. And my next competition question would be, what is your go-to icebreaker? So if you don't know what an icebreaker is, like what is a go-to thing to talk about? For example, Jono, the reception area up to like where they will meet you to the interview room, like is it a elevator ride? Is that a long walk? What is the setup over there at Craft at Freshwater?
Yeah, for us, there's a foyer in our building. We're actually on level 27, so there is an elevator ride. So a lot of times I'll ask a candidate to text me or call me when they're in the foyer, and then I'll come down and get them. And so it's an elevator ride up. It's through the gates at reception, and then it might be a waiting for the room to be ready for 5-10 minutes sitting in reception. So I'm sitting across from the candidate, so have something to say. That's a good point.
So, and you mentioned before, Jono, that like, what is the number one icebreaker? Like, what is the icebreaker that everyone says? What's the one? I'm sure we're thinking the same thing. In fact, I wish I should write it down on a piece of paper because I know we'll have the same response. What do they always say that like when you first see them, usually more often than not?
I mean, in my experience, it's the weather.
Yeah. Yes. Weather. That's exactly what I was going to say. I should have wrote that down. It's 100%. I've got this in our little ebook. No one cares about the weather. Like nobody ever. People don't really, it's no, unless it's like some boiling hot day and fire is coming down from the sky, you can maybe talk about the weather. But guys, like I really, like you want to open up and get a conversation going. For example, we know that you live in the fancy building over there at Freshwater. So I'm sure this is going to come naturally, be like, what a fantastic, convenient, remember, nice and easy for you to get to. What a fantastic, really convenient location. How long have you been in this building? You know, how many people work in this building? Oh, wow, amazing. Awesome cafes downstairs. What's your favorite? Something like that. It's going to get them talking, and it's a compliment. You know, you're already saying nice things to them. That's a nice compliment that makes them feel good. And if you say that it's convenient, it's giving a subconscious concept that this was really easy for you to get to, so you'll be on time for work. And I think that that's a good one, because if, you know, even if you live really far away and it wasn't that convenient, it might be a good thing to say. So, and, you know, just compliment the building and the office environment. I think that's a good one. Or, you know, drop in the comments some of your ideas. I've got plenty, but, you know, I could go on and on and on. We do have limited time. So the event finishes at 7. So we've got like 20 minutes. Now let's have a little look. More questions. Yes. What if the interviewer is stone-faced? Look, sometimes, like I said, you know, the interviewer might not be as engaged or impressed by you, and don't be offended too much by that. It could be their style, and it also could be a bit about what you might be talking about. Now, one thing I always tell everyone is be careful of your voice and your tone and the volume. So voice is tone and volume, right? So tone is like talking like this and keeping it interesting, like when you're reading a child a book. Or you can talk like this and not be interesting and be really boring and flat and hypnotize people to go to sleep. And that is like really how a lot of people talk, and it's really not that interesting. You're going to have anyone having stone face after that. The next thing is voice volume. You don't want to be talking too loud or too soft, because too loud, it will make them uncomfortable, and too soft, they're not going to hear you. And the interviewer will never, very rarely, unless you're paying them for career coaching, they're not going to tell you where you're going wrong and be like, sorry, you're speaking too soft. They'll just be polite, let you talk, and then just finish the interview and be like, So keep that in mind. I really think that that's important. But the thing I would say, and that's another question, by the way, from Workaholic Filler. I don't know why you got such good questions. I'm really not just picking that out from this person. Just I read the question before I even read the name. But basically, the thing is, guys, if the person's not that interesting and you're not that interested, don't see that as a bad thing. It's like going on a date. It doesn't always, you should not force a job when the culture's not for you. The next person who comes along who talks like this would love that job. It'd be great for them. Don't take a job that's maybe not for you, because all it will do is make in 3-4 months time, when you're like trying to find ways to quit, that it's not going to be good. So make sure it's a match that you want. Don't just try to pretend to be somebody you're not, right? To like get a job at a place you don't want to work at. Do you agree, Jono? Have you
Yeah, it's a good point. It's a good point. I think the other thing I would add to that as well is it is a kind of more of an advanced interview tip, but the concept of mirroring or matching can be something that's useful as well. So not everybody is going to be super high energy as an interviewer and super fast paced. And you might be interviewing or in a job speaking to people from different walks of life and different areas of the globe, and they might have a different way of speaking. So there's sometimes when you can actually try and watch the cadence, the pitch, the tone, the speed that the interviewer is talking at, and almost adjust your style a little bit just to slightly match the interviewer and how they're speaking. So if you notice that they're not speaking super fast, if you do speak super fast, that might make a little might be a little bit uncomfortable for the interview, and vice versa. So that's something to keep in the back of the mind as well.
Definitely. I definitely agree with that. It's all about your emotional intelligence. Be really aware of what's going on. Be aware when you're answering a question, if you're talking for too long, or if you're not talking enough. You should really be kind of trying to think of how you're being perceived by the other person. But I really think always stay true to yourself too. Mirroring is fantastic, and it really is good when you're a graduate, when you're still trying to find out like who you actually are. But as well, like be yourself in that as well, 100%. So when someone's like really calm, be really calm, and that will mean that you can build that bond and that relationship. So 100% I agree with that. Another question I think that a lot of people when they ask, they sometimes get wrong, would be like your salary range. This is a tough one, don't you think? Yeah, when the young people.
It is. Sure. It's a tricky one. Yeah, this is it's a conversation that needs to happen, and it's an important conversation. Like my personal philosophy on having this is that it's a very important discussion that recruiters need to have with their candidates, and I think that conversation is more of a HR recruitment conversation as opposed to talking about it to the hiring manager. My recommendation would be there's a time and place for that conversation. However, it's important at the end of the day, especially if you're supporting a family as well. I think one tip from me is you can do your own research. There's a lot of content out there on the internet. There's salary surveys from recruitment agencies. You can talk to experts like yourself, Jess, who have the industry knowledge of what the market salaries are, so that you can educate yourself, so that you don't go blind into that conversation.
Yeah, and I think when a client asks you the question, so if it's a recruiter, obviously they represent multiple companies, and they're just trying to figure out like what is it that you're looking for from a salary perspective. And with a business as well, they're trying to see, are you within the range of this role? And you can look at places like Glassdoor to see the average salary of a position at that company, but you don't always have to have that be it's not always accurate. And a lot of these sort of information online, like like if you Google average salary for a data scientist, sometimes it could be way more or way less than actually the truth. And so I think getting to know people, but having a range of what you're looking for, what is it that you're hoping to be paid, and give a range. If they do so ask, it's usually because they would like to know, because at the end of the day, it's like when walking into a shop, you're trying to buy, a TV, yeah, and you got two TVs. Ask the price first of all. That's important. You want to know how much is it going to cost. But employers have a budget too, so just keep that in mind. And then the second thing is as well, not always is less is more. So it's a psychology thing, right? We always value things that's a bit more expensive as being better. So the TV that's $5,000 versus a $500 TV, which one is better? Everyone I asked this, they always said $5,000 TV. It's like, well, I didn't even tell you the features of the TVs. The $500 one has got amazing, it's 3D and virtual and holograms. The other one's is tiny little box. But it's all about the value perception. So don't undersell yourself thinking that will actually give you an advantage. Sometimes it just might make you look even less appealing sometimes. It's a tough one, and seek professional help and advice. That's the number one thing, guys. Number one. We got some questions coming through. How much you expect from work? Okay. From the work. Maybe rephrase that question, Adelia. I just don't understand that one too well. Exactly. Remuneration is a HR question. Spot on. And do remember though, some people, and by the way, this event, I've had some people comment, this is for grads and students. So this advice is really for the people starting out in their career, just to kind of let you know that. But some companies, the person who you're meeting with may be the only person in that HR team, for all you know. I don't know. So do you know what I mean? Keep that in mind. The second one is Mitalesh. He's asking, does visa status matter for jobs, as I've been rejected for a visa? So thank you, Mitalesh. Awesome. I don't know where you are in that picture. Looks beautiful. But does visa status matter? Look, yes, the IT and engineering community, it is really, really heavily, the demographic is often from overseas. That is just a really, really common, I'm sure in the university, you'll see that by looking at the people who are around you. We have a lot of people from overseas in Australia who come to study here. Now, the only reason, some companies are different, but the only reason why there's a visa restriction is usually that sort of stuff is set by the government. At the end of the day, if you don't have the permit and working rights, then unfortunately, sometimes the companies can't do much about that. Just like if I go to America, I'm going to be expected to have I think it's your green card or whatever it is, your card for working. You need to have those permissions and remember that. But there are lots of other ways around it. You have the whole Uberization of jobs. So, that you're not bound by similar rules. So just keep that in mind, depending on the company that you're applying for. How's your process for those kinds of things over at Craft?
Yeah, I agree 100% with everything you've said. Sometimes companies have to adhere to regulations, and legally we can't hire people in permanent roles if they've got a temporary visa. And as a general rule of thumb, your visa or your work rights should be matching with the job. So, for example, if you're applying for a 1-year graduate program, you need to have at least 1 year of working rights. And if that graduate program is going to go on into a permanent role, you need to have almost permanent work rights to reflect that. One thing I would say is be aware of your work rights. I know if a lot of you are graduates and finishing uni, typically if you're on a visa or a student visa, when you graduate, you'll be given a 2-year kind of graduate visa, and there's unlimited work rights in those 2 years. And then after that, it's on you to kind of process and apply for your permanent residency or be sponsored by a company. But if you know your timelines, you can work around that and plan for yourself. Don't leave it till the last moment. Don't leave it until you've got a couple of months left on your visa before you start looking for, that company to sponsor you as well. So be proactive around that.
During your studies, guys, you should be doing internships, and a lot of internships out there, they are unpaid. So it's not a job. And you can gain valuable experience. Try and get one that's part-time so you can do it with your studies. You'll gain this amazing experience so that when you're going out to the job market, like what you've mentioned there, Jono, that it's that temporary bridging kind of visa that's for 2 years. It means that you will like land the job right away rather than spending a year trying to find something. So like really take that seriously, take it upon yourself to go out there and get some sort of experience. And once again, like, you know, a lot of companies, they do have regulations on these things. So don't be disheartened by the company. It's not that they don't want to have you. It's just that sometimes we're bound by certain rules, but there are places that are different. So just do your research and ask those questions, no problem. But you can always get internships and things like that. And being aware of your rights comes into the interview as well. So being aware of like what questions are illegal. You know, there are certain questions that are actually you're not allowed to ask people, such as like, you know, do you have children? Are you married? These kinds of questions are actually illegal, or asking your gender or asking your age. You know, a lot of these sorts of things it's discrimination, or your religion or your nationality. Like, you know, do your research on all of those. Just don't feed into that, and maybe just avoid those kinds of conversations, because it's not really their business, your personal life and these other things, and you don't want to lose a good opportunity for, you know, some of these reasons. But at the same time, you also don't want to work at a place that would not hire you if you told them these things as well. Like if you having a certain religious belief goes against that company, well, good riddance. You don't probably want to work for a place like that anyway. So keep that in thing. Jono, do grades matter? This is from Vishu. Does grade matter?
Interesting question. Vishu, interesting question. So grades during your university, obviously, I'm assuming, and what marks you got. I've seen them being put on a CV. Some companies for a graduate program, they require a minimum grade average, like a credit average to apply. And to be honest with you, I would say to meet the selection criteria is really where it applies. Personally, I don't, you know, I'm not as interested in a particular grade that a candidate has. If he's got the right skills and attitude to apply for a graduate position with us, we're happy to consider you. And that comes out in the testing phase. You know, it's quite thorough, the psychometric testing, the interviews. So if someone excels in that area, but they didn't get the best grades, I would still definitely be open to giving them an opportunity.
I love that. You know, for me, I like literally don't even look at, in many cases, the university they went to, or unless it's like specific for a role. But if that person is self-taught, I'm going to take that with just as much you know, credibility as if they went to university. I mean, there are so many good online courses these days, and like people who learn by themselves to program. So I don't ever judge, but there are places that can be particular. So, and someone's asking there, Vineet, to you, does Kraft Heinz have a cognitive test? So you mentioned you got the psychometric test and stuff like that.
Yeah, we're doing really cool things in the graduate recruitment space. Actually, one of the really fun, interesting things that we've used in our most recent hire of graduates was something called Pymetrics. So it's going into that gamification space. So it's a series of online games and aptitude games, and the situation is set up in a very simple game. It's actually fun to play, and you're playing these games, and at the same time, it's testing your cognitive ability and your preferences in terms of your attitudes. So we use Pymetrics or gamification in our most recent run, which was super cool. And then other times we've used traditional psychometric testing as well. So that's a big industry trend at the moment that you'll see come out.
I love that concept, actually. And, you know, it's so important, guys, to understand the process and how many interviews and stages you have to go through, because some places have, like, I mean, I did a post on LinkedIn recently, and the maximum that we had was someone who did 8 rounds of interviews. So and I know what kind of interview it is that you're going to go for. If you come and you're like rocked up in your suit, you've been preparing, but then turns out you're just doing like a coding test, that's going to be like, oh, bit bummer. So make sure that you've actually done a little bit of research on like what kind of interview it is that you're going to be doing. So you can scrub up your coding before you rock up, particularly for engineering people. Yeah. Do you guys definitely do a test as well? I'm sure you would.
Yeah, we do technical tests and things like that as well. And I mean, just on the cognitive tests as well, like My recommendation is a lot of these psychometric tests, it's not a right or wrong type of answer scenario. It's not like you either win or you don't win on the psychometric test. It's more testing your aptitude and your preferences. So a particular candidate might be higher in risk taking and, lower in another area. I actually had a candidate reach out during the grad recruitment and said he's done this particular gamification test previously, and he wasn't happy with his results. He actually didn't try. It was a few days after his exams had passed, and he'd been out partying for a couple of days, and he didn't think he did well. So can he redo it? But when we looked at his results from his previous time doing the test, he actually was a good fit for our criteria and the type of profile that we were looking for. So even though he didn't, think he won or he got the right answer, the test was showing that he had the right aptitude for what we were looking for. So
I love it. And like, once again, it always really comes back to be yourself and like be true to yourself, because if you fake it, it's only going to last for so long until it all falls apart. Now, we don't have much longer, guys. We've got 5 minutes left. Once again, drop your comments down below of the icebreakers that you think are really good for an interview. Drop that down below, or any further questions, because we do have competition and prize going on for a professional resume. Our internship program is actually open at the moment, and someone has mentioned here, can I apply for an internship program abroad without a visa? Well, we have a remote internship program. So this is amazing. You get 12 weeks like practical experience. Yeah, and you can do it remote, and you do not need a visa. It's just for you to get some work-based experience. So that's a lot of fun. So that's for you there, Adelia. And we also have one question. We have so many good questions, guys. But
this is awesome,
I know. I have to come back to one more question that was from Workaholic Filler again. He's just, or she, you're just really, really, really good at asking these questions. So what if you experienced a toxic environment in a previous position? How do you spin that into a positive experience for an interview question as to why you left? Well, to be honest, from my perspective, I think Jono might have a different answer for this, to be honest. I have a feeling. But for me, I would just try to not address it. You don't want to be bringing up anything negative. You never want to say anything bad against the other company, because either way, it's kind of like, you just say it wasn't the right place for me. It was just not really the right kind of culture for me. It might be suitable for someone else, but over time, there was just some not really synergies on the workplace. It was just not really a suitable workplace for myself. And so I've decided to pursue other opportunities. Simple as that. You do not need to go into detail and make it some really horrible experience. And I think as well, if that ever does happen to you, go get, like I said, a bit of coaching beforehand, because you don't want to be already in this deep, dark, depressive hole before you go and interview, because sometimes they can feel it and they can see that all over your personality. What about you, Jono? What do you think on that?
Yeah, it's a tricky question, isn't it? And I think Workaholic Filler's on fire with the questions tonight. But yeah, similar. My response is similar to yourself, Jess. I think try and avoid being personal. If you're going to tackle that question and talk about that it wasn't a right fit for you, don't be personal about the company, and don't be personal about the employer or manager that you worked for. Answer it the way that Jess said. Obviously it wasn't a good fit for me. Always try and be what's the word? Classy about your previous roles that you've worked at. Don't talk down about the company, and try not to talk down about specific people. So yeah, you got to approach that with a little bit of tact, I think.
Yeah, particularly in this Melbourne or Australia in general, we often know each other. That business may do business with that other company, so you don't want to ever badmouth. Now, we only have 3 minutes left. Let's talk about after the interview. Is it okay to call and harass 10 times a day, Jono, after the interview? Like, hey, just following up. What would be your suggestion after the interview?
Yeah, we get that. I mean, we've gotten a lot of that before. A lot of recruiters have experienced that, and it's a little bit of an art as well, because sometimes it takes quite a while, and sometimes the onus is on us as interviewers and hiring managers and employers. We need to get the feedback quickly to the candidates. But I think I've seen a lot of advice out there about sending a follow-up message. I think a follow-up message is okay to the recruiters. Maybe avoid contacting hiring managers directly as well. You've always got a point of contact contact there in HR or in recruitment that you can go to. I think don't be aggressive with it. Don't multiple times a day. It's not the right way to do things, but you're just checking in if there's an update. I think most of the time people are going to be receptive to that. If you're going to drop them a note, just following up, has there been any feedback? I'm keen to understand. That's all language that's great. It's not going to offend us or catch companies off guard if it's like, I demand to know an update and, why haven't I heard back kind of thing. Might not be the best language.
People, just remember, in corporate world, a week is like, that is not very long. For students who you guys sit around, but not sit around, I can't say that because you don't, but students, they maybe don't, you've just finished a study, you might have a lot of free time. But for us, sometimes we can be really super duper busy. And so it might take us a week to get back to you. And so don't feel that you need an urgent, immediate response, and be really professional, because the last thing you want to do is shoot yourself in the foot and maybe give off this negative, if I didn't never hear back, and but as well, you want to follow up, but just do it in the right way. Just keep it really positive and be really understanding to the fact that I'm sure craft get if we get thousands of applications each week, I'm sure you get many, 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 many more times than that. So, they've got so many candidates, and if it's not a match, well, you just keep on trying, consider it practice and keep trying. You never know. In 3 years' time, you might be perfect for a role at Craft and you'd be working there with Jono. I'm sure that'd be a lot of fun.
Anytime, absolutely, yeah. I think that's good. The resilience piece, the discipline piece. I think there's a role for everyone out there, and especially everyone that's on the stream at the moment. There's a perfect role for you guys out there, and there's more than one actually. There's many opportune positions for you guys, and it's just about absolutely there's a fish in the sea, right, kind of thing.
If you take the same approach, I'm seriously serious, you are really going to have so much better results. So I really appreciate your time, Jono. It's been an absolute pleasure. And the questions, oh my goodness, I'm going to have to print those out. Some of them are amazing. I really hope that this has actually helped somebody. And I know that this was for students and grads, but I noticed that there are some people who I'm sure are professionals that are going to be watching this and might have tips. If you've got a tip, drop it down in the comments. We'll be announcing the winner on my LinkedIn page. So follow me over at Jessica Reesby. Hop onto my page and see the winner. I just have to check with the marketing team because I've been busy running this. So we'll have the winner of the professional resume. Jono, what's the link for them to apply for your grad program?
So our website, it's craftheinzcompany.com.au. So like you said, make sure you watch the website itself, because it's not Kraft Heinz, it's Kraft Heinz Company, and you can Google it. And we advertise on the careers website. We advertise on Seek and LinkedIn, and also Grad Australia and Grad Connect as well. So keep an eye on all those platforms, because that's where we'll advertise, and we look forward to seeing some of you guys.
.au, so ours is the .au part. So remember that there's the internship programs are open right now. So apply. It's reesby.com.au/internship. Upload your resume, and if you do want to apply and talk with Jono, I'm sure I'll pass over those questions to him. So hop over to Craft. Get your resume in. Maybe before you do that, get it looked at. We do have professional CV services. And thank you everyone for tuning in. Amazing. The positive comments. I love it. Just really, really wonderful, wonderful comments, which you don't see that often on the internet, you got to say. But thank you so much. I hope that you guys have learned something from this free session. Tune in for more. This has been part of the Digital Innovation Festival. State Government of Victoria were the sponsor for this event. And we also have Kraft Heinz. Thank you so much. And tune in to our next session. Thank you, everybody. And thank you, Jono.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Jess. Thanks, Reesby. And good luck to everyone out there as well.
Very welcome. Good luck. Good luck. I'll see you all soon. Thank you. Bye.